Testing. Good morning, members. It's the appointed time. We have a quorum. I call to order the meeting of the panel on public service. Agenda item 1. Information paper issued since the last meeting. No information paper has been issued so far. Item 2. Items for discussion at the next meeting. Members, please refer to the list of outstanding items for discussion. That's CB bracket 4302 stroke 2024 bracket 01, and also the list of items of following up. That's CB bracket 4302 stroke 2024 bracket 02. Any questions? No? We move on to the date, and rather the items for discussion at the next meeting. Our next regular meeting will fall on April 29th, that's Monday at 10:45. The government proposed 2 items. First, enhancing training to strengthen civil servants' national identity and patriotism. And 2, manpower situation of the lifeguards of the Leisure and Cultural Services Department. Members, any comments, questions? If not, we will discuss those 2 items at the next meeting. Item 3, civil service related matters were featured in the 2024-25 budget. All eligible members can take part in the discussion of this item. Members who wish to speak, please press the request to speak button now. We first invite Mrs. Ingrid Yeung, Secretary for the Civil Service, and her team to join us. I now invite Mrs. Ingrid Yeung to walk us through the paper from the government. Members can refer to LC paper number CB bracket 4302 bracket 2024 bracket 03. Mrs. Yeung, please. Thank you, Chairman. Civil service related matters featured in the 2024-25 budget. The highlights are found in the paper sent to the Secretariat. I will now outline some key points. First, on the civil service establishment. To ensure the sustainability of public finance, the civil service establishment will maintain zero growth, and that's starting from 2021 to 22. There will be reprioritization, internal redeployment, streamlining of work processes, and the use of technology to improve efficiency and implement new initiatives. This is to cope with the growth in the workload. In the 2024 to 25, the government will stick to the target of zero growth in the civil service establishment. The establishment will be kept at a level not exceeding the level at the end of March 2021. We expect that as at the end of March 2024, there will be 194,000 posts in the civil service establishment. I want to stress that under the zero growth policy of the civil service establishment, that is not to say there will be no growth in the establishment of individual bureaus and departments. These bureaus and departments can have regard to their operational needs and with full justifications increase posts. But this also means deleting posts no longer needed and the expiry of time-limited posts in other departments and bureaus. Overall, there has to be zero growth in the civil service establishment. Compared with the end of March 2021, despite the increase in the provision of public services, the civil service establishment actually saw a reduction of roughly 2,000 posts on an accumulated basis. On training, in 2024 to 25, the expenses related to training are $250 million. The Civil Service College will continue to take measures to step up training on governance, leadership, public policy making, and global perspectives. With the mainland and overseas study visits gradually resuming starting from mid-2023, the Civil Service College will also arrange for more mid to high-ranking civil servants to go on visits to the mainland and overseas. This is to enhance a sense of national identity and global perspectives. On medical benefits, this is a matter close to the hearts of members. We will continue to meet our obligations under the employment contract for civil servants. For civil servants and other eligible persons, there will be continued provision of medical benefits. For the parts under the hospital authority, the money is already part of the budget for the hospital authority. On the civil service, clinics, and dental benefits, and this includes the services of dental benefit through certain private clinics, which is a pilot scheme. The funding is roughly $1.1 billion. We have also set aside roughly $1.7 billion for meeting the reimbursement of medical expenses. On pensions, in 2024 to 25, the budget is roughly $48 billion. On MPF and CSPF funding, relevant bureaus and departments have already set aside the money, and the money set aside is roughly $9.5 billion for these two schemes. The Civil Service Bureau's highlights are set out in the 2024 to 25 budget. And in the controlling officer's report under Head 143, we will continue to implement measures and initiatives. On recruitment, we will learn from last year's experience by stepping up the work to attract more people dedicated to public service to join the civil service. The Civil Service Bureau will continue to implement the measures under the 2023 policy address. This means starting from April 1st, 2024, an incentive scheme for civil servants to send their children for education in the mainland, and also the marriage leave and compassionate leave. We will keep an eye on the implementation of the schemes. We will also work on the revised Civil Service Code and release it as soon as we can. We will also work on the core values and the code of conduct under the revised Civil Service Code. The extra expenses will be minimal associated with the work. As for the other funding, they are set out in the paper. I will not go into the specifics. I welcome questions from members. Thank you, Mrs. Yuan. The members lining up to speak, Mr. Lai Tong-kwok, Dr. Frankie Ngan, Ms. Nixie Lam, Mr. Chao Siu-chung, and Mr. Tong Li-jie. 5 minutes for each member, questions and answers inclusive. Mr. Lai Tong-kwok. Thank you, Chairman. My first question, paragraph 5 in the paper. More funding is given to the Department of Health to hire doctors. How many vacancies are there at the DH? For vacant posts, the funding should be part of the budget already. Why describe the money as extra funding? My second question is this. For civil servants and other eligible persons, the reimbursement for their medical expenses, one item is hospital charges. What are we talking about by hospital charges? Is it the hospital authority? Paragraph 6, more housing allowances. For civil servants reaching a certain rank, those people automatically qualify for housing allowances. For lower-ranking civil servants, they are subject to a quota. This increase in housing allowances, is it a sign that there's a sizable growth in directorate-level civil servants leading to the increase in housing allowances? Finally, paragraph 8, civil servants on new terms are given a choice between two options, either the Mandatory Provident Fund scheme or the Civil Service Provident Fund scheme. So for the extra CSPF contribution made by the government, is that exclusive to the CSPF scheme? Is it the same account as the MPF account held by civil servants? Mrs. Young, please. Now, on the point about additional provision, in 2023 to 24, we have a revised estimate. That revised estimate takes into account the vacancies that can be filled and that vacancies that will remain unfilled under the DH. The pilot scheme on scaling services have tapped into the funding. We have crunched the numbers. Some vacancies will not be filled within the year. So the money will just sit there. That's why we have come up with the revised estimate. The additional provision comes down to this. We still have a year to go. The post is there and should be filled. The DH is working on recruitment. Some posts will see a recruitment exercise, so we have to make allowance for it. If the vacancy is filled, we have to have the money to pay the hiree. That's why we have the additional provision. That's why we're talking about additional provision based on the revised estimate for 2023 to 24. For some money that cannot be used or to pay for people who have yet to be hired or on scaling pilot scheme, we cannot use that money. That's why we're talking about additional provision. Now on reimbursing the hospital charges, Deputy Secretary Ms. Ann Chen can discuss the other point. Now on housing allowances, civil servants on new terms can access the housing allowance once they reach a certain rank. It's just that the housing allowance are accountable. Instead, they get a cash allowance instead of an accountable housing allowance. As more civil servants reach the rank of accessing housing allowances, the expenses on housing allowances go up. Now, on the MPF and the CSPF schemes, it's the same account. For civil servants on probation, their MPF contributions are subject to a limit. After civil servants pass the probation bar, the civil service provident fund scheme kicks in. I also explained the government contribution, which is a high level. So that's how the MPF and the CSPF schemes work. On funding for hospital charges, Ms. Ann Chen can tell us more. On reimbursing medical expenses, a civil servant goes to a hospital authority's hospital. The HA doctor provides certain procedures, and those procedures cost fees. For eligible persons, some fees can be waived. Now, such as the drugs on the drug formulary. Normally, there are extra charges, but then for civil servants and eligible persons, these CSEPs can apply for the reimbursement of drugs, and this applies to HA's charges. Chairman, a follow-up question. I see the item reimbursement and hospital charges. Is it just for the drugs? I know some drugs are not on the drug formulary, say cancer drugs, so more fees are charged. That does not include other service charges, is that correct? This does not cover other service charges. A civil servant may visit a general outpatient clinic or a DH clinic. Now, a normal citizen is charged, but then a civil servant indicates that they are a civil servant and they can access the service free of charge.
Dr. Nga Man-yu. Thank you, Chairman. As set out in the paper, because of the fiscal deficit, there is a zero growth in the civil service establishment, and 2,000 posts have been reduced on an accumulated basis since 2021. I would like to know if there is any increase in the number of NCSC posts, and for example, there was a previous meeting where we discussed about the health supervision work that is done at the boundary control point. They are taken up by NCSC. Now, the COVID has subsided. Do we need so many people there to take temperatures of the visitors? Does the administration have any plan to reduce the number of civil servants, NCSC, and outsourced employees? Secretary, thank you. The number of NCSC post holders changes every year. If we have short-term plan that needs to be implemented or large-scale projects, then we will hire more NCSC staff. But overall speaking, the number has been stable and it has been reduced from the peak. In 2023, 30th of June, the bureaus and department employ 9,468 NCSC full-time staff. Compared with the peak in 2006, the number stood at 18,537. The number have dropped 49% from the peak. If you want us to compare the figure with last year, well, it actually depends on whether there is any unforeseeable circumstances or any projects that need us to employ short-term staff. Individual bureaus and departments hire these NCSC staff. So we don't have a figure on the NCSC establishment, but we do control the number. We have a cap on the number of NCSC staff a bureau or department can hire. They can, having regards to their operational needs, exceed the cap. But if the exceedance is too substantial, they will have to apply to the CSB and give us the reasons why they need to go beyond their cap on the number of NCSC staff. As for outsourced staff, we mostly outsource services. As to how many employees the outsourced company deploy to take up those tasks, well, that's up to the outsourced companies or agencies. When the contractors put in their bid, we look at the price and the quality of their service. We don't really look at the number of staff they employ. Sometimes we do. If we launch a large-scale project and we need a large number of staff there, then we look at the number of people the contractor employ. But all in all, the contractors would decide on how many staff they would deploy to a particular project to deliver the services set out in the tender document. Chairman, I have a follow-up question. The Secretary said that there is a cap on the number of NCSC for each department and bureau. I wonder how they come up with the figure, and is there any supervision mechanism? For DH, if you give them a cap of 1,000 NCSC staff, will they exhaust the quota so that we have so many employees at the boundary control point to take visitors' temperature? As every time when I visit the express rail station, I see so many staff members there to take the visitor's temperature. I think that we have devices to take those temperatures, so I don't think that we need that many employees. So I wonder how the administration review and supervise as to how efficient the bureaus and department are making use of their resources allocated to them. Chairman, we encourage the bureaus and department to make use of technology to save on manpower cost. We will relay your concern to the Department of Health. As to how we decide on the cap allocated to each bureaus and department as to the number of NCSC staff, I will defer to the Deputy Secretary. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Dr. An, for the question. Each bureaus and department have a cap on the number of NCSC staff they can employ. We do allow for a 5% buffer. If the number of NCSC staff exceed the quota by more than 5%, they will have to apply for CSB. Well, as for the staff members taking visitors' temperature at the boundary control point or the express rail station, they are actually outsourced employees. They are not NCSD staff members. I know that the DH is reviewing the manpower. Chairman, in the same meeting of the panel in November 2023, I understood that the employees taking temperatures of the visitors at the boundary control point were NCSD staff. So I would like to know if they are actually NCSD staff or outsourced employees or outsourced staff. Secretary, during COVID, we needed more people to take forward various tasks. So it could be the case that there were NCSC staff stationed at the boundary control point to take temperature. Perhaps Deputy Secretary can supplement. Thank you. During COVID, there were more outsourced employees than NCSC staff stationed at the boundary control point. Any follow-up question? If not, Ms. Lixi Lam. Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Secretary. I would like to ask about how we can make better use of our civil servants. There are a number of supernumerary and time-limited posts that have been opened or created. How can we streamline a workflow to save on manpower costs? Now we are going digitalized. I fully support that. But I wonder how much manpower can be saved by digitalizing and how much manpower, well, if manpower can be saved, can we reduce the number of employees hired under the government? We came across this dilemma whenever we try to approve any project of digitalization. If you need to engage, say, 20 staff members to complete this digitalization, and we don't see how many manpower can or how much manpower can be saved, it's hard for us to approve the digitalization project. I hope that you can explain more. Secretary. Thank you. When we scrutinize a large-scale computerization or digitalization projects, we ask the department and bureau to estimate how much manpower can be saved after digitalization. Sometimes large-scale digitalization projects take several years. And after the completion, we need to go through testing and trial runs. The final number as to how much manpower can be saved may be different than what was expected before the completion of the project, but we do monitor that. Let me give you an example. For LCSD, they launched a digitalized service platform last year. More than 80 workers can be saved. Do we ask these 80 workers to resign? That's not the case. Administrative staff clerical officers, they can be redeployed to other departments or bureaus. We do have vacancies for clerical staff, and we are having an all-year-round recruitment. For the manpower that can be saved by digitalization, we will redeploy them to other departments and bureaus. We adopt the same approach as for our future digitalization projects. Any follow-up questions? If not, Mr. Chao Siu-chung. Thank you, Chairman. There is a 10% discrepancy between the establishment and the strength. The workload of civil servants is quite substantial. I don't think that the situation is ideal. Is the administration actually determined to solve this problem? How long do we have to wait until the vacancies can be filled? The establishment stands at about 190,000, but the strength stands at only 770,000. So I wonder if the secretary is determined and is sincere enough to fill all the vacancies. Will you fill all the 6 vacancies in 3 years? If not, how long will it take to fill up all the vacancies? And as mentioned in the paper, the establishment has reduced by 2,000 posts as compared to end March 2021. As mentioned by the financial secretary in the budget, 3,000 posts will be reduced by 2024 to 25. But then I was told that the establishment will be frozen at the level of 2021. Now you have reduced the number of posts by 2,000, and then you will further reduce it by 3,000. So the level of establishment will not be frozen at 2021. And are you going to further reduce the establishment? Because there are some vacancies that have not been filled for a long time. After, say, streamlining the workflow and adopting technology, some posts may be removed or deleted. Will you add some more posts that are needed for delivery of public services so that the establishment of civil service will not see a further reduction? My third question. As mentioned in the budget, in the coming 3 years, each department and bureau have to cut their expenditure by 1%. A lot of frontline civil servants are worried. If the department and bureau will reduce the number of NCSC posts, would the secretary let us know if the bureau and department will hire less NCSC staff so that frontline civil servants will have a heavier workload as a result? Secretary, thank you. The government is definitely determined to fill all the vacancies. We don't want to see that many vacancies either. As mentioned on other occasions and in previous meetings of this panel, the vacancy rate increased due to various reasons. There were less employees in the labor force. As different sectors are trawling for talents, some of our civil servants have left our establishment, and there is a competitive labor market. In last year, we have implemented some new measures to recruit more civil servants to fill the vacancies. For posts that require tertiary level of education, we actually accept university students at their 3rd year of study to apply for these posts, and we will issue conditional offer to them. We have also stepped up our publicity in the mainland and overseas, and we also established a booth at the Korea Expo. We have expanded our publicity network to attract more suitable candidates to apply for civil service positions. We don't want the vacancy rate to stand at such a high level. We don't have a statistics for 2023 to 24 yet regarding the recruitment, because there are some recruitment exercises that have not been completed. That is why we don't have the figures yet. But when we have that, I believe that that would show that the number is more favorable than those in the past years. We will step up our effort in recruitment in the future. That's my first point. Second, for civil service establishment, we said that we froze the level at March 2021. As for zero growth establishment, well, actually, workload of civil servants increases, and we have enhanced our public services. We foresee that in 31st of March 2025, the establishment will reduce by 2,000 posts. We will increase positions as suitable. Sometimes we may streamline workflow and redeploy employees to reduce manpower. For individual bureaus and departments, if they need to increase the number of positions to meet the needs of operation, they can do that. Let me give you an example. This year, there is a net increase in certain departments, including the fire services department, because of the third runway operation, and there is a new ambulance depot and fire services station at the Lantau North. That is why there is a net increase in the establishment for fire services department. For CSTB, they have increased some time-limited posts to organize the 50th National Games. After the National Games are completed, the time-limited post will lapse. We create posts when it is necessary, but we will not. Well, we will keep our establishment frozen at the level of 2021. After reprioritization and adoption of technology and streamlining workflow, if by doing that we can further reduce the number of posts in the civil service establishment, we will be glad to see that.
Now, on the 1% cut to departmental expenses, departments have to reprioritize their tasks. They have to review their workflows for room for streamlining, making greater use of technology, better use of resources. Departments should look for better ways to save resources to manage that 1% cut. I doubt departments will simply hire fewer NCSC staff to meet the target. I doubt departments will simply ask fewer workers to take on more work, because that would make the NCSC contract unattractive. Fewer people will apply. We have a manpower crunch in Hong Kong, and existing NCSC staff may even leave. So doing that would backfire. So I doubt departments would take that course. I believe departmental management is clear on this point. Mr. Tony Tse. The civil service establishment and recruitment are close to members' heart. There's a cap on the establishment, but circumstances change. I think the Secretary's remarks make sense. There will be changes to posts, especially the time-limited posts. It's impossible to reach a strength that is 100% of the establishment. We get that, but you cannot have huge discrepancies. If there are no operational needs, then it makes no sense to hire someone just to meet the establishment level. Technology can help achieve savings in manpower. So on the point about establishment and strength, of course, recruitment should continue and adjustments should be made where warranted. Increases and decreases in staffing should be allowed where needed. We should not blindly pursue a strength that is exactly the same as the establishment. I have expectations for the Civil Service College to play its role to boost the efficiency of the civil service. Mr. Lighton Kwok raised a question about the housing allowance. It's $560 million. Does this point to an increase in civil servants eligible for the housing allowance? In 10 years' time, some civil servants will no longer be on the housing allowances. So is there a marked increase in civil servants eligible for the housing allowance? How large is the increase? Some retirees may have already maxed out on their allowances. Other retirees may be on the old terms. So are we achieving any savings? So can the Secretary tell us about the situation? The increase is more than 10%. Now on the pilot scheme on scaling services. Does the government consider this scheme worth continuing? Can the government tell us more? Now, on health officer and dental officer grade, the wastage, money is set aside for hiring. Is the government confident that given the money set aside, people can be hired for these two grades, health officers and dental officers? How many vacancies are there in these two grades? Secretary. Now, on the housing allowance, indeed, more civil servants are eligible for the housing allowance. Civil servants on the new terms can get up to 10 years of housing allowance. It's rare to see retired civil servants being on the housing allowance. The situation changes from year to year. It depends on the rank of the civil servants involved. It's simply because more people now qualify for the housing allowance. Can the Secretary provide a paper after the meeting to give us a sense of the situation? Yes, I can provide a paper on the projected increase, etc. Now, on the pilot scheme on scaling. We have not done the review yet. The review will be done after a year. The scheme is working well. More and more civil servants can now book an appointment at a private dental clinic and access this pilot scheme on scaling. The scheme is well received and achieves our goal, and that is fewer civil servants have to get into the queue for the DH's dental clinics. At the time we had in mind, we will review the scheme. It's hard to say whether we will expand or scale back the scheme, but we will look at all these factors when the review comes. Now, on the wastage of health officers and dental officers and our recruitment target, Chairman, I don't have the information at hand. Can we provide the information after the meeting? More money is set aside for hiring. Can we have figures on that as well? Chairman, unless we have new clinics due to open, and that is without any new clinics, there will be no addition to the number of dental officers and health officers. We're simply hiring to fill the existing vacancies, just like what I told Mr. Lighton Kwok. So there will be a paper after the meeting. Mr. Ronick Chen, 3 questions. Zero growth in the civil service establishment. There were rises and drops in different departments. Across the 7 discipline services, there are varying degrees of changes. Can the Secretary tell us the departments that see sizable increases or decreases in the establishment? I know that establishment is not the same as strength. There's a meeting chaired by a Secretary of Department to decide how many people to hire. Staff costs make up the lion's share of departmental expenses, and departments are expected to make cuts. So this means if a department cannot secure more secure recruitment caps or quotas, then the department will have to think about where to find the 1% in cut. And how often do these meetings happen? After all, departments have to think about where to find the 1% cut. Now, on reimbursing medical fees, other members have asked the questions. There will be a 35.3% increase in the funding, and it's demand-driven. More people acquiring the services, longer life expectancy, costlier drugs, and new drugs entering the market. Among these 4 factors, which of them is the major factor? Is it because more people accessing the services or more costly drugs? And what's the mechanism for determining the increase? How do you give weighting to each factor? Is there a scientific approach or is it a rough projection? Thank you. Secretary, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As to which department or bureau sees a more substantial increase or decrease in their staff number, well, as mentioned, Fire Services Department have a substantial increase in terms of their staffing. They have increased more than 100 posts in their department. And for CSTB, because of the national games they have increased $125 time-limited posts. These post holders are deployed in OGO, police, EMSD, RHSD, and so on. For Housing Bureau, because they have to take forward housing safety schemes and to take enforcement actions against unauthorized building works at exempted houses in new territories, they have increased 35 positions. For reduction of posts, for departments in bureau of a larger size, they deliver more different kinds of services. They have more room to save on manpower costs by adopting technology and streamlining workflow. Let me give you some examples for AFC or FEHD in 2024, 31st of March. Their establishment was 11,483. For the next year, it would be 11,381. So there is a reduction of 100 staff or workers. For LCSD, as of the 31st of March 2024, their establishment was 10,455. 1 year later, it will stand at 10,378. There is a reduction of 80 posts. These large departments can reprioritize their work, streamline their workflow to reduce manpower. As for your third question, your second question first. We do have a mechanism internally to review the needs to increase manpower in certain department and bureau, along with the needs to allocate more resources to them. If they need to increase the number of posts under their department, they will have to apply to the CSB. At a certain time, we review the needs of different bureaus and departments. Sometimes there is unforeseeable circumstances. When that arise, we can handle such emergency. If the department and bureau are approved with the increase in the number of posts, they can start recruitment next year. As for the reimbursement of medical fees and hospital charges, we don't have a scientific approach to calculate the increase in terms of expenditure for that. Sometimes civil servants needed to make use of a more expensive drug, and those drugs can be an expensive. Those drugs can cost millions of dollars. When that's the case, the expenditure would increase by a more substantial extent. So we don't base our estimates simply on the figure of the previous year. We make a reasonable forecast. We will not double or triple the estimates. Next, Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you. Ms. Nixie Lam asked about how the adoption of technology can save on manpower costs. When we have a, project in collaboration with the Greater Bay Area, then the CSTB would need to ask for 100 more posts in their department. For most municipal solid waste charging, the AFCD or FEHD may need to hire more people to take enforcement action. So even with technology, you may not be able to reduce manpower cost. Now, the bureaus and department are asked to cut their expenditure by 1%. In different panels, we rely on the administration to tell us about their situation. For the 1% cut of expenditure across departments and bureaus, can we ask the secretaries or directors of different bureaus and departments to let us know what expenditure they've cut on? Sometimes, well, some expenditure cannot be cut. Sometimes we may be able to save on manpower cost for a temperature taking and boundary control point. As I've mentioned previously, the paper submitted to the panel on public service is too simple. Is there an alternative way to draft the paper? I think that the administration should enrich the content of the paper submitted to this panel. Sometimes digitalization may not allow us to save on manpower costs, but enhance accuracy. Previously, the law enforcement officers need to issue fixed penalty notices on traffic contraventions manually, and that were subject to errors. Now, after digitalization, the accuracy has enhanced. Perhaps we need directors and heads of departments to explain more to us about the expenditure instead of just asking us for funding. I think that that would facilitate our scrutiny of the funding approval. I want to see how much we can save in terms of manpower cost across the entire government. I think that bureaus and departments should come to the LegCo every year or every 6 months to let us know about their manpower situation. Chairman, we asked the department to cut their expenditure by 1%. That is a separate matter from the establishment. For expenditure, we're talking about expenses of government departments and bureaus. As for establishment, we ask the bureaus and department to review it from time to time to see if they can replace manpower by using technology, by reprioritizing their tasks, and streamlining their workflow. And the bureaus and department have to cut their expenditure by 1%. Mr. Ho is correct. Different bureaus and departments have different needs. If we ask them to come to the LegCo every 6 months, well, I think individual panels may have different views for different departments. Maybe they can decide on their own as to whether the director or heads of department should come every 6 months. As for funding approvals submitted to Finance Committee on digitalization or computerization projects, we will set out the manpower saved in the paper submitted. As mentioned by Mr. Ho, for traffic contraventions or illegal parkings, the workload involved is quite substantial. Now, after digitalization, the process is faster. The goal of digitalization for illegal parking may not be to save manpower, but in the future, we will see if we can explain better in terms of expenditure when we submit staffing or funding proposal. Thank you. I think that you have to talk to the panels. Next, Mr. Kok Wai Kan. Thank you, Chairman. We have a fiscal deficit, and the administration has decided to freeze the civil service establishment. For frontline civil servants, they are worried about the large number of vacancies. The establishment is 190,000 odd positions, but the strength of civil servants stands at 170,000. There is a discrepancy of about 10 to 20,000 positions. Bureaus and department is looking to solve this problem. To inject more new blood into the civil service establishment. Does the administration have any plan to solve this problem? That's my only question. Thank you, Chairman. Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. We do have a plan to tackle this issue, but there are various factors affecting what the end result would be, including the vacancies in the private sector. Because in terms of remuneration and salary, the private sector has more flexibility. They offer better fringe benefits. And some young people may opt for further studies instead of joining the labor force. Some young people, after obtaining the bachelor's degrees, opt for further studies. These factors affect our recruitment. We will continue to step our effort in recruitment. As mentioned, our openings are open to university students in their third year of study. There are about 30 grades that are open to the university students who are in the third year of university study to apply. We encourage them to apply for these positions. For publicity on the mainland and overseas, we will continue to work on them. There are more and more Hong Kong students studying on the mainland. In Career Expo, we also have some booths, and we also participate in the recruitment day in various universities. And we have a dedicated section or session on the recruitment week of 3 universities in Hong Kong. And we set up booths there for university students to know more about the choices that they may have in terms of a civil servant's establishment. We will step up our effort in this regard. Last year, I reported to this panel that we have started an all-year recruitment for our clerical staff. The recruitment process has been shortened to half of the time needed previously, and we have adopted different ways to fill the positions. In terms of recruitment methods or publicity, if there are any new ideas, we will implement them. We also encourage bureaus and departments to shorten the recruitment process and to notify the candidates of the results as soon as possible while adhering to the principles of fairness. By this, we can keep these candidates who are actually interested.
Chairman, I believe departments will do their level best. I hope the CSB can also ask the department to get on with their work so that we work towards the goal of the current government, that is result-oriented approach. Otherwise, we risk seeing a vicious approach, a vicious cycle. It's the same pay, but the civil service jobs come with a heavy workload, and then civil servants will want to move to the private sector instead. Secretary, there's a nearly 2,000 gap in between the strength and the establishment of the civil service. Can you give us a paper on where the problem lies, as in why there's such a huge discrepancy between the civil service establishment and the strength? Is it because of the work? Is it because some posts are outdated and people are reluctant to join those grades? Chairman, I can provide a paper after the meeting. Some posts see a high vacancy rate. Part of the reason is we have expanded the establishment for that grade, but there's keen competition for workers in a certain grade, so that's why you see a larger vacancy rate. Dr. So Shenwing. Zero growth in the civil service establishment for 4 years in a row. There's a gap of 10,000 workers between the strength and the establishment. But the government has opted for reprioritization and redeployment to meet the work demand. I commend the work of the Civil Service Bureau and the government. I have questions about two expenditure items. In 2024 to 25, two items are special. First, more mid to high-ranking civil servants to go on mainland visit tours and also overseas studies to enhance their national identity and global perspectives. Which mainland cities and overseas places are we talking about? By overseas, are we focusing on just the Western developed economies, or are we talking about the emerging markets along the Belt and Road, ASEAN, and the Middle East? So what's the focus? This January, the CSB rolled out the Mainland Education Award Scheme for children of civil servants. What are the eligibility criteria? Is the scheme on? Have you received applications? Are there children of civil servants already studying in the mainland under this scheme? Thank you. I'll take the second question first. For civil servants on new terms, they can send their children to mainland schools. We are now open for application. We haven't come to the deadline yet. We cannot tell how many applications there will be because some applications will come in nearer the deadline. For civil servants on new terms with children already studying in the mainland, we give an award for those high achievers among these children. We roll out this award scheme as a sign of encouragement for civil servants considering sending their children for studies elsewhere. We want to have this award scheme so that more civil servants will consider sending their children to mainland schools. Now I come back to the first question, the cities for the study tours. The head of the CSC can tell us more about the mainland study visits. So I will address the overseas studies. Many professional grades will go on overseas study visits. Say for the ratings and evaluation department, our system in ratings and evaluation is similar to that in the UK. This is about professional training. So the civil servants concerned will visit the UK. On leadership and public administration, there are study visits to different places. Some visits are in Europe. If places in, say, Southeast Asia offer suitable training on those areas, we leave the matter to the professional grades involved to consider the places for their visit. Now, the head of the Civil Service College can tell us more about the mainland study visit. Thank you. The CSC arranges for mid to high-ranking civil servants to visit the mainland. We have 9 mainland institutions working with us. Peking University, Zhejiang University, Nanjing University, Wuhan University, Jinan University, and Sun Yat-sen University, along with the National Academy of Governance. Mainland visits are a priority for us. In 2023, there were 30 such visits. 1,100 civil servants completed the training. In our 2024 estimate, we expect 1,500 civil servants will receive such mainland training. Each department will have regard to their needs as they work with other mainland institutions, that is, on top of those 9 institutions on mainland training. Any follow-up questions? No. It's now my turn. Secretary, in the budget, there's no reference to the 5-day week. The 5-day week has been in place for many years, but that scheme has yet to cover some grades. There are constraints, there are 4 principles to stick to. But as a matter of fairness and staff welfare, how can we extend the 5-day week to more grades and departments? Do we have information on grades and departments that have yet to see the 5-day week? What are the constraints? Can the Secretary tell us more? Some civil servants pursue further studies, and the practicum may involve going out of town. Social workers may have to go out of town. They cannot secure leave for the further studies. Are there extra resources for civil servants to complete their studies, and then these civil servants can come back and serve their departments? The government is trying to take things to electronic platforms to meet people's needs. Can we have information on the percentage of tasks that can be done on electronic systems and the manpower savings achieved? You cannot have wholesale computerization overnight. You still need manpower for certain tasks. Or you can have paper-based applications and electronic applications going in parallel. So what will be the direction of this development in the community to save manpower? Some institutions charge a fee for using paper-based statements or bills. So customers switch to email instead. We want to go green, we want to save manpower. So for the government, what strategies can the government adopt to go paperless? This can save manpower and also ensure service delivery. There are new measures in the business. Under the BUD fund, there are many measures. The sectors can apply for those schemes, but then we have a staff shortage and NCSC staff members are hired. The staff members cannot cover all those applications during normal work hours. They have to work on applications over a weekend. During normal office hours, the staff members have to address phone inquiries and locate files. So many departments are chasing after deadlines. How can we meet existing service needs and also address the overwork in some departments? Thank you, Chairman. The 5-day week is part of the next agenda item, but I can share some details now. For departments or clerical grades not on the 5-day week, we have the number. We do biannual reviews. The last survey was September 30th, 2022. As at the 30th September 2022, there were 12,700 such workers. For discipline services, the number is 16,900 officers. Many factors are at play. The principle for the 5-day week is to have no reduction in the conditioned hours of service. That's part of the employment contract. When you do 5-day work week without cutting the conditioned hours of service, workers have to work longer each day. Some departments have to offer services on Saturdays. When you extend hours from Monday through Fridays, no people come to access the service. That's why you still need Saturday services. For discipline services, working excessive hours may not be good for the officers, and that may overwhelm the officers given the physically demanding tasks of the discipline services. Making changes to the workflow may provide room. For the discipline services, greater use of technology may help with some tasks, and then manpower can be planned from a fresh perspective. So that's it for the 5-day week. The chairman's second question is about leave for further studies of civil servants. If a grade or department thinks the area of study has to do with the civil servant's job and finds the studies helpful, the department or grade can pay the tuition fees for the civil servant and give the worker time for the studies. That way, the civil servant will not have to take their own leave, but not all studies qualify. For studies that have little to do with their work, those civil servants will have to take leave for those studies. Now, on automating tasks, We have wholesale automation in some cases. In other cases, we still need people to do the manual tasks for members of the public who struggle with the computer systems. There's a difference between private sector institutions and the public sector. For the private sector, companies may decide to forego certain customers who struggle with the tech. But for the public sector, we have to treat all members of the public equally. Some seniors may struggle with online services. That's why government departments have staff there manning the counters and providing paper-based services for the public. There are different service demands. That's why we have a different strategy. All in all, automating services and greater use of technology mean that we can save manpower in some tasks. In some cases, we are trying to make tasks less error-prone through technology. Or in other cases, we use technology to handle some tasks, and that frees up manpower for other tasks. So on using technology and going paperless, different departments vary in their practice. Some departments are aggressive in using technology, but we have to spare a thought for people who struggle with the tech, so we cannot have full computerization overnight. On departments that handle quality of life issues, those departments handle complaints and inquiries. The staff there address phone inquiries. So much time is spent on addressing phone inquiries. If departments see such a need, they can apply for more posts. As I said, we're not trying to do a blanket cut to the establishment of all departments. We want to reduce complaints and the need for inquiries. That's also a goal for departments.
其他提問。
Any other questions? If not, then we conclude this agenda item. Next, item 4, family-friendly employment measures for government employees. Members who would like to put questions may press the button now. Now, may I invite Secretary for the Civil Service to walk us through the paper submitted, that is CV bracket 4302/2024 bracket 04. Thank you, Chairman. As a good employer, the government has all along endeavored to provide a family-friendly work environment to enable its employees to cope with both work and family commitments. Today, we brief members on the family-friendly employment measures for government employees that we offer. Now, I would like to talk about 5-day week. Since 2006, we implemented the 5-day week initiative. 2, without compromising the level and efficiency of public service and incurring additional costs to taxpayers, we want to improve the quality of civil servants' family life. We conduct a biannual surveys to keep in view the implementation of 5-day week for staff in bureaus and department. The last round of survey was conducted on the 30th of September 2022. As at the set date, around 137,200 civil servants and about 12,300 full-time NCSC staff and post-retirement service contract are working on a full 5-day work pattern that accounts to about 82% and 87% of the total number of full-time staff, respectively. The government will continue to advocate 5-day week work pattern. And when feasible, we arrange staff to rotate to 5-day week or to reduce instances of non-5-day week required each month. The second point that I'd like to talk about is maternity leave and paternity leave. The government has been taking the lead in providing eligible government employees, including civil servants and employees appointed on a non-civil service terms, with maternity leave and paternity leave benefits that are more favorable than the statutory requirements. On the 1st of April 2012, we provided 5 working days of paternity leave to all eligible male government employees. And on the 27th of February 2015, we extended the 10-week maternity leave to 14-week. For employees who have completed more than 40 weeks of continuous service before taking maternity leave or paternity leave, they are entitled to full pay during the leave period, which is more favorable than the arrangement under the Employment Ordinance, whereby the pay leave are calculated on the basis of 4/5 of the employee's average daily wages. On vacation leave, marriage leave, and compassionate leave, we encourage the management of the departments to have regards to the family needs of staff members. Under certain circumstances, in case of insufficient leave balance, civil servants may apply for advanced leave or unpaid vacation leave up to 12 days with full justifications. Since April this year, we will start providing marriage and compassionate leave for civil service or government employees. They can take up to 3 days for marriage leave or compassionate leave on each occasion of their marriage or death of their family members. For active government employees, they are eligible for these leaves. Department of Health and the Health Bureau have been promoting and encouraging the implementation of breastfeeding-friendly workplace policy so that mothers can continue to breastfeed for a year after childbirth. Specific measures including allowing staff to have 1 to 2 lactation breaks for expression of breast milk every working day and provide a private space with a seat and electric outlets and so on. The government has also provided baby care room facilities and lactation rooms in some new government premises. As at the end of 2023, there were about 380 baby care rooms in government premises. As a good employer, the government will continue to review the current arrangement from time to time and listen to the views and suggestions of the staff side and other stakeholders. Under the principle of striking a proper balance between taking care of its staff family needs and prudent use of public money, the government will continue to endeavor to provide its staff with a family-friendly working environment. We are happy to take members' view and answer their questions. Thank you, Chairman. Now it's the time for members to put questions. I will read out the order. Ms. Nixie Lim, Mr. Lai Tong Kwok, Mr. Chao Shi-chung, Mr. Kwok Wai-kan. 6 minutes per member. Please, Ms. Nixie Lim. Thank you, Secretary. The government has done a good job. There are a lot of working mothers in Hong Kong. It's difficult to balance their responsibilities for child caring and working. As the biggest employer in Hong Kong, the government should play an exemplary, should take the lead in providing such services. As mentioned, the government has provided some baby care room facilities in certain government premises. So is there any standard In terms of equipment to be provided in baby care room, will there be hot water, for example? And I know that there will be lactation rooms. So what equipments are provided in these rooms? I would like to know more about them. And also, will you provide for other facilities in government premises, as mentioned earlier? Well, is there a review conducted by the government to provide such facilities in sports centers, for example? How many lactation rooms do we have currently? And will you increase the number in the future? There are more and more mothers who are breastfeeding. So will you increase the number of lactation rooms? I am a new mother myself. After a child has been born, for the first 6 months, they need to go to the doctor for regular checkup very often. I hope that the government will provide for some child caring leave days for their employees. I've talked to the private sector about this to see if they can provide for such kind of leave, and they told me that it's difficult to do so. I know that the government take the lead in providing their employees with paternity leave. If the government can do that with childcare leave, then that will encourage people to give birth. In my interview earlier, I said that it's a crime to give birth because my colleagues may have something to say when I need to take leave very often to take care of my child. Working mothers need such kind of a flexibility to take care of their newborns. Can the government let us know about their plan? Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Let me talk about the facilities first. In the breastfeeding friendly workplace policy, well, we have a number of measures, including in the 8-hour working day, we need to provide for 1 to 2 lactation breaks of no less than 30 minutes, lasting for about a year. And after a year, the employee can apply for a flexible arrangement with their employer. And there has to be a private space with a seat in the lactation room. And there has to be also a chair, electric outlet, and refrigerating facilities for safe storage of expressed breast milk. I've taken a look at the lactation rooms that we have. I know that there is clean water supplied therein. For lactation rooms and baby rooms facilities in new government premises, well, there are 380 of them. And I was talking about the total number of baby care rooms. There is different design to these baby care rooms, having considered the locations, but all in all, there are water supply, a bed, where mothers can place their baby there to change their diapers. When design allows, we will color the room with more vibrant color. So much about the design. Now let me talk about the childcare leave. We need to strike a proper balance between the prudent use of public money and the taking care of his staff's family needs. As mentioned in our previous agenda item, we have a vacancy rate of 9.7%. We will listen to our employees' views and consider providing childcare leaves in the future. Any follow-up questions? Well, Secretary, if there are more than one employees in the baby care room or lactation rooms, they may have to rotate when they need to use the facilities. Is there any desanitizing services to ensure the safety of the employees? You mentioned that there are beds in the baby care rooms. So do you mean that the employees would bring their baby to work? Or is it the case that their foreign domestic helper would bring the baby to work for the mothers to take care of?
哺乳室就
Chairman, we are talking about two different kinds of facilities. Now, the lactation rooms are for breastfeeding mothers. It's usually for civil servants, but there are also lactation rooms on government premises for public use. That's for lactation. For facilities also open to the public, there will be regular cleaning to be arranged by the department. Now, on baby care facilities, those facilities are open to users of government facilities. People need to change diapers for babies, or sometimes a baby cries. The parent has to calm the child down. A quiet environment is needed. Feeding may be needed. Parents need a suitable environment. So those facilities are open to members of the public using the government facilities. Mr. Lai Tong-kwok. The 5-day week has been in place for 20 years. The scheme is well received by civil servants. But only 82% of civil servants can enjoy the 5-day week scheme. The secretary told us the 5-day week is subject to a number of principles that are constrained. Some departments provide services in demand on Saturdays. In such a case, it's impossible for that department to implement 5-day weeks unless there are more resources for that department. My question for the secretary is 82% as high as we can get? How likely is that we can go beyond 82%? In recent years, I have observed something. For certain departments, the service demand may surge. To cope with the increased demand, the department has to keep offering services on Saturdays and Sundays. Extra services need to be provided by those departments. In that case, the workload for the staff of those departments go up instead of down. The government has also announced a freeze on the civil service establishment. So in those cases, some civil servants have to work over the weekend. What's the government's policy? Will there be extra resources for those departments to have enough manpower for the work? Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, thank you. %82 of civil servants can benefit from the 5-day week. I think we can go higher than that. Departments have to plan afresh their manpower deployment, or they can look for opportunities to plan afresh their manpower deployment, and then they can achieve the 5-day week. Say, take the post office as an example. They have more than 2,000 post officers. On May 16, 2022, the post office put in place the 5-day week. I don't have the details of that case, but I think Back then, the post office changed its workflow, and that made the 5-day week possible. Now, another example, the FEHD. At the Columbia Cemetery's office, 9 workers work on those areas. Starting from 2021, the 5-day work week has been put in place. The department made changes to deployment, and that made the 5-day week possible. So departments need to constantly review their workflow to look for room. Sometimes technology can help. Part of the work can be handled by technology, and then the 5-day week becomes an option. For departments offering counters, I cited that as an example. When many people use the counters need to stay open on Saturdays. But if part of that work can be streamlined, or if technology can help some of that work, you can have the counters open 5.5 days. Even in that case, you can have the 5-day week. You can have the workers take a day off from Monday through Friday while working on Saturday. So this depends on whether the work undertaken by a department allows room for the 5-day week. Mr. Lai mentioned in some departments there is so much work that warrants officers working over weekends. Where there is little room for redeployment, and it's unlikely for technology or automation to help, then we will allow more posts where warranted. We're not putting a blanket ban on the creation of more posts. Whether there is a deficit or not, departments keep reviewing their establishment. They look for room for streamlining or reducing the establishment. So it's all about constantly reviewing the establishment. Any follow-up questions? No. Mr. Chao Siu-chung. I welcome the department's or the government's position on treating the 5-day week as a family-friendly measure. More than 80% of civil servants can now benefit from the 5-day week after more than 10 years of work. The 5-day week is popular with civil servants. 18 years into the 5-day week scheme, the government sticks to the 4 principles behind the 5-day week. It's 18 years into the scheme. Departments that can run the scheme have already done so, and it's unlikely for the holdouts to be able to roll out the scheme now. There's a squeeze on public resources now. Even when workflows can be redesigned, the establishment may be reduced. So that leaves no room for rolling out the 5-day work week. When this situation goes on, 20% of civil servants will keep working 6 days, whereas the other 80% of civil servants work 5 days a week. You can have that as a transitional arrangement, but letting this continue over the long run is unfair. This will make the 20% of posts working 6 days unattractive. So it's time to review the 4 principles governing the 5-day week. So my question for the Secretary is, Will you review the 4 principles? That's my first question. Now I turn to my second question. The 2023 policy address proposes a package of measures to create a childbearing environment that's meant to be a clear signal to the community. People have told me, including civil servants, they are loath to have children because of their work commitment. So can the government take bolder action in its measures? Can the government go one step ahead and be more aggressive than private firms in rolling out employment measures? Say for paternity leave. In 2012, the government took the lead in rolling out 5 days of paternity leave. That set a good example. There are calls for a review of the 5-day paternity leave. Some people call for a 7-day paternity leave instead. So for the government, can the government add 2 days of paternity leave for civil servants? So that once again, the government is taking the lead in rolling out family-friendly measures to encourage childbearing and set an example for private firms. Will the government give thought to other measures such as baby care leave? Can we have such leave? Can we pilot baby care leave among civil servants? Secretariat. 2 points about the 5-day week. As I said in my response to Mr. Lai Tong-kwok's question, I think we can go further than 82% in the uptake. Now, let me share some details about the pilot schemes, and they're not part of the 82% figure. The FEHD, more than 2,300 clerical officers, they are on the 5-day week. At the LCSD, more than 50 clerical staff on 5-day week. Once these pilot schemes work out, we will include them under the total. So different departments have regard to changes in their services and their changes in their work mode and deployment. Departments have been able to roll out 5-day week for their staff, so I am optimistic. Now, we're trying to make good use of the existing manpower. We try to keep the establishment as it is. That will not affect the rollout of the 5-day week. One fundamental principle is no reduction in the conditioned hours of service for civil servants. Civil servants work 5 days instead of 6, but the work hours will remain the same. The output remains the same under the 5-day week scheme. We try to make the best use of the existing manpower. To do that, we will look for ways to streamline the work. We reprioritize the work and make greater use of technology. So that has little to do with the 5-day week. Now, on Mr. Chow's second question on encouraging childbirth, on paternity leave and baby care leave, we want to strike a balance between the prudent use of public money and meeting employees' needs to cope with family commitments. I don't see room in the near future to increase the paternity leave, but we will remain open to comments and views.
Next, Mr. Kok Wai Kun. Thank you, Chairman. On family-friendly employment measures, it's good that the government is stepping up their effort in this regard, and that complements with the government policy to encourage childbirth. I have a few questions. First, paternity leave of civil servants. When will you increase that? Can you increase that? We've been having these 5 days paternity leave for quite some years. Only when the paternity leave for civil servants have been increased before we can see an increase in the statutory paternity leave. So it's important for the civil servants to enjoy more paternity leaves. So my question for the Secretary is, when will you increase the paternity leave for civil servants to 7 days? Second question. It's mentioned in the paper that baby care room and lactation rooms will be provided for in the government premises. I fully support that. Can we provide for baby care services in new government premises as well, so that after civil servants have given birth to their baby, they can keep their babies near where they work for 2 to 3 years? This can alleviate the pressure on new mothers and fathers. My third question. Do you have a calculation on the rate on childbirth for female government workers or employees? Do you have such a figure on the fertility rate so that we can further promote childbirth among government employees, so that we can set up a sort of KPI for the government, because we have quite a number of government employees? My fourth question. There are some frontline civil servants who ask this question. For medical staff, they have to work on shift. Does the administration have any policy for female employees so that they can be exempted from overnight work or working on shift after they are pregnant for some weeks? Because working on shift and working overnight duty can affect the health of pregnant mothers or pregnant women. Do you have such a policy? Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. In terms of paternity leave, as I've answered previously, we will continue to listen to our employees' views, but at the same time, we have to take into account the use of public money, and we have to strike a balance between that and the staff's family needs. We will continue to listen to our employees' views. As for baby care services or child caring services, there is a government premises in Cheung Kwan O to be established, and we will provide for a child care center there. We will implement a pilot scheme there to see how we can implement child care services better. Because we're not sure if civil servants prefer to have child care centers near where they live or near where they work, because sometimes they have to travel for quite some distance to work. So will the civil servants prefer keeping their child near where they live or at work? That would affect the popularity of our pilot scheme. When we consulted the district councils some years ago, the district councillors said that they hope that some quotas in the childcare center in Cheung Kwan O can be set aside for local residents, because there is huge demand. The childcare center in Cheung Kwan O will be established on a pilot basis, and after it has operated for quite some time, we will review the effectiveness. As for the fertility rate of civil servants, we don't have a figure, but I have some other numbers that I can provide. From October 2022 to September 2023, the number of paternity leaves applied by male civil servants are about 2,800 odd. For marriage leave from female employees, that amount to 900 odd. So as for how many civil servants are in their fraternity age, well, we don't have such figures. Some male employees may choose not to apply for paternity leave, but as for the number of marriage or maternity leaves applied, we can see how many female employees have given birth to a baby. For medical staff working on shift, well, not that many of them actually work on shift. I think that mostly hospital authority staff work on shift. For disciplined services and some small number of departments, their staff may work on shift. For physical demanding jobs and jobs that require long time standing or long hours standing, for people working in these positions, there will be appropriate arrangement for them after they are become pregnant. We will have regards to the nature of the work and the various factors before we make an arrangement for them. Secretary, I would like to correct the figures that I provided. The numbers that I provided were the combination of the top 10 departments. The total number is 35,006 male employees. I'm talking about all government employees, including SCSC staff, have applied for paternity leave. As for maternity leave, there are about 8,136 applications. You said that each barracks and department have arrangement for pregnant women who need to work on shift. Do you have any details on the arrangement? Chairman, I do not have the details of the arrangement right now. May I supplement after the meeting? I think that Mr. Kwok was asking if the government departments have guidelines for the work arrangement for pregnant women. Will the pregnant women be working indoor more often? I've handled a case with the teachers working for the Education Bureau. The women suffered from miscarriage after being arranged or asked to work outdoor for long hours. So does the government have any guidelines for the relevant departments and bureaus to avoid any unfortunate events from happening so that pregnant women can actually give birth successfully or deliver successfully? Thank you. There are different physical requirements and nature of work for different civil servants positions, so we don't have a guidelines, but different departments will have regards to the nature of the positions to make relevant arrangement. There are two types of arrangement. There are arrangement targeting women who have given birth. At the early stage of pregnancy, if the pregnant woman is asked by their doctor to not work outdoor or avoid standing, then with such a medical certificate, the department would definitely follow the advice given by the doctor. Any follow-up questions? It's my turn. I would like to ask about maternity leave and the guidelines as discussed. Does the Civil Service Bureau have any guidelines for departments and bureau to follow. Say, when they come across a pregnant woman who have reported their pregnancy to their departments, will the department have any guidelines for the supervisors or any broad guidelines to the supervisors to avoid sending the pregnant women to go outdoor to work? After the female employees have returned to work after maternity leave, they may not be as fit physically, or they may have to express breast milk at work. Do we have any guidelines for the departments to educate the supervisors or colleagues about the situation so that they can follow and have a clearer rules to abide by? When I was handling the case with the teacher, well, the supervisors of that teacher asked the teacher to work outdoor, and eventually the teacher suffered from a miscarriage. The bureau may be responsible for issuing a guidelines, but I hope that there can be a broader guideline issued by the Civil Service Bureau instead. My second question: when the female employee is on maternity leave, they may have to go for checkups. As mentioned in the paper, the pregnant women have to apply for sick leave when they need to go for a medical checkup. Will the Civil Service Bureau consider not treating such kind of medical checkup as sick leave? From pregnancy to delivery of the baby, will the Civil Service Bureau give some kind of prenatal checkup leaves for female employees? These kind of measures will be one of the ways to attract people to join the civil servants or civil service, so that we can fill our vacancy and retain talents. Apart from guidelines for employees, we talked about child caring facilities. Maybe we can make reference to the airport authority, because I know that they have established a child care center, and that is very popular. The employees bring their children to work with them, and they place their children at the center. The airport authority engage an NGO to operate it, and the NGO can operate the center for free. Perhaps the CSB can make reference to the practice of the airport authority, and the service is actually very popular. There's no quota left. There are more people who are attracted to join the airport authority because of the arrangement. Secretary, thank you. On the guidelines for departments, I know that you're talking about a broad or general guidelines. For pregnant women or sick employees or women who have given birth, departments and bureaus are aware of how they should take care of them. We will see if we need to further raise the awareness of the of the bureaus and department. Secretary, my apologies, because it's almost time. May I extend the meeting by 15 minutes? Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. About prenatal checkups, it's essential to pregnant women. If employees need to go to see the doctor, they don't have to spend their own vacation leaves. They only have to apply with their supervisors and for the medical checkup. If there is suspicion from the supervisors, the employees will only have to produce a medical certificate or doctor's note, and the employees will not have to spend their vacation leave to see the doctor. As for your third point, we make reference to organizations that are providing childcare services to their employees. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, let's conclude this item. Now, agenda item number 5, any other business? There being no other business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, members and secretary.